Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another Quran study. God willing, today we'll be reading from Surah number 29, verse 30. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. He said, "My Lord, grant me victory over these wicked people." Angels visit Abraham and Lot. When our messengers went to Abraham with good news about Isaac's birth, they also said, "We are on our way to annihilate the people of that town, Sodom, for its people have been wicked." He said, "But Lot is living there." They said, "We are fully aware of everyone who lives in it. We will, of course, save him and his family, except his wife. She is doomed." When our messengers arrived at Lot's place, they were mistreated, and he was embarrassed by their presence. But they said, "Have no fear and do not worry. We will save you and your family, except your wife. She is doomed. We will pour upon the people of this town a disaster from the sky as a consequence of their wickedness. We left standing some of their ruins to serve as a profound lesson for people who understand." So we see here that Abraham was extremely kind and clement, and these were the people that were committing homosexuality, and the people of Lot. And Abraham was giving information that they were on their way to annihilate the people of that town. And Abraham said that Lot was living there, and of course the angels were fully aware, and God is fully aware of everyone who lives. So obviously, Lot was going to be saved, but his wife was going to be doomed because it says that she betrayed him, and they were destroyed and set as an example for the coming generations, and their ruins are still there for people to see as an example for people. Obviously, this retribution that they went through in this world was had no comparison to was no comparison to what would actually happen. Something wrong with my video. Weird. My video froze. One second, okay. I don't know if you guys can see it.
It's still blurred, but
Yeah. Okay, I think it's back. All right, so we see that this was set as an example for these people, and for obviously the retribution, the hereafter is a lot worse than the retribution in this world, and that these people will experience, and but because these were the people who were the first people on earth, God created that as an example and a reminder for the coming generations that they should not think about falling for these kind of lustful sins. Now, a lot of people will these days will try to present misleading information to try to prove to people that they were created like that or things like that. But we understand that from the Quran that this is just a sin, just like any other sinful acts. Just like lying, cheating, stealing. All these things have been made into diseases because also doctors love to take people's money for things like that, and tell people that they have a disease and they can try to cure them and stuff like that. But We know that these are, just sinful acts that people get accustomed to, whether it's gambling, alcohol, drinking, lying, cheating. People commit sins. They like committing sins, and this is what they do to get their satisfaction. The bodily satisfaction, whether it comes from drugs, alcohol, or any other kind of sins, adultery, etc. And obviously the underlying element for all of those sins is obviously disbelief in the hereafter, or being doubtful about the hereafter, and not being certain about God's revelations, not being certain about the hereafter. So that is the main reason. If people try to tell you anything else, obviously that is a lie, and their personal opinion, and nothing scientific about that. As far as God is concerned, God created us all equal, and we all have equal chances of making it. And thinking that God would make some people in a way where they are more inclined to fall in sin based on just the way they're born, it was unfair. And we know God is the most just, and we know God created us in the perfect design, and nothing bad comes from God. And people will try to come up with all kinds of arguments, to try to, create feelings of sympathy and justification for these types of acts, to try to, make these things right, and make them more acceptable to people. But we understand this is wrong, just like anything else. Just like you can't use any sort of argument or justification for cheating, and we're going to read that next, God willing, in Shoaib, verse 36. It says, Shoaib, to Madian we sent their brother Shoaib. He said, O my people, you shall worship God and seek the last day, and do not roam the earth corruptingly. They disbelieved him, and consequently the earthquake annihilated them. They were left dead in their homes by morning. Similarly, Ad and Thamud were annihilated. This is made manifest to you through their ruins. The devil had adorned their works in their eyes, and had diverted them from the path, even though they had eyes. So Shoaib was among the people of Shoaib were among the people who were doing all kinds of sinful acts and cheating people, and were merciless. And God allowed them, as well as Ad and Thamud, to be annihilated. All these communities were collectively annihilated, and then there were others. We have examples of, as I'll read, God willing, in the next verses. Verse 39, it says, God's immutable system. Also Qarun, Pharaoh, and Haman. Moses went to them with clear signs, but they continued to commit tyranny on earth. Consequently, they could not evade the retribution. All those disbelievers were doomed as a consequence of their sins. Some of them annihilated by violent winds, some were annihilated by the quake, some we caused the earth to swallow, and some we drowned. God is not the one who wronged them. It is they who wrong their own souls. Right? So we understand from these verses that God is not the one who wronged them. They're the ones who wrong their own souls. So all these communities were people that were annihilated as a consequence of their sins, right? And so we understand that these people were made as an example of communities that were collectively annihilated, right? But we understand that God's system remains the same throughout generations for people. So if people these days commit any of these sins, they can expect the same consequences. It's not that they would have to be born in Pharaoh's time to be annihilated, or to suffer the retribution, to have the retributive disaster where there is a point of no return. So, and as the Messenger of Covenant also explains, these days we may or may not see annihilation happen collectively. There may be good people among the bad people, and they'll all be mixed in, like say in San Francisco or some other place. You have big cities, right? And it's but the thing is that even in these communities that were collective, right? We had, for example, people like Lot and other believers, and people like Moses and other believers, and those people were consistently saved by God, and the people who were disbelievers were marked and annihilated, handpicked, for targeted. It's not like the angels will ever make a mistake, or God will ever make a mistake or miss a target or forget someone or anything like that, right? But even now, things will happen and people will get annihilated, even as collectively, we see that, the messenger of the covenant also put in one of the footnotes about homosexuality, people who tolerate may be hit by an earthquake. But people will get annihilated selectively, also individually, by diseases and disasters like, AIDS, cancer, and other types of disasters, right? Where they will go through tormenting, painful retribution, which will eventually cause in their death, right? So the thing about these annihilations that we discuss is that, people were tormented and tortured, as a consequence of their sins. They died a painful and miserable death, right? But the death itself was not a disaster. Death is just a fact of life that everybody goes through. But the way in which they died, the way in which their souls were taken, as well as the way the feelings and the pains that they went through while they were alive, is what distinguishes them also from the other people, right? So we know for a fact that the righteous people do not die, they don't suffer pain, they don't suffer misery. Before any kind of pain or misery affects them, in a way that could take away their happiness, God takes away the soul before that, and we have the example of Schroeder, as explained in one of the appendices. And so we understand that this is the case. This is, as it says in the subtitle in verse 39, it's God's immutable system, right? So you understand that this system does not discriminate between people now or people before. It's a system that never changes, and anybody who is living a life like these people did, where they have no regard for God and no regard for the hereafter or God's revelations, they're going to have a pretty miserable life, and their last 10 or 15 years or whatever of their life is going to be pretty miserable, and you will see they'll have a miserable end in this world as well, right? And so this is because this is God's eternal system. And God says all of these people were annihilated as a consequence of their own sins, and God doesn't hurt anybody, God doesn't wrong anybody. It's they who themselves chose that for themselves. So God willing, I'll continue reading verse 41, the spider. The allegory of those who accept other masters besides God is that of a spider and her home. The flimsiest of all homes is the home of the spider, if they only knew. God knows full well that whatever they worship beside him are really nothing. He is the Almighty, the Most Wise. We cite these examples for the people and none appreciate them except the knowledgeable. God created the heavens and the earth truthfully. This provides sufficient proof for the people. So it says in the footnote, it takes a knowledgeable person to know that the black widow spider kills her mate. The use of the feminine reference to the spider in 2941 is thus significant. This is in addition to the fact that the spider web is physically very flimsy, right? So if you look at the spider web, it's physically very flimsy, but if you were a spider and you looked at it, it is the strongest thing out there, right? I mean, it is pretty strong, but because it's so flimsy, we know that this example really fits because it says the flimsiest of all homes is the home of the spider. So if you look at all kinds of homes, you could see this would be the flimsiest, right? Because you have there's certain spiders where their homes are even more flimsier than some other spiders, and you can see, especially for example, the black widow spider, right? It's very flimsy. You can't really even see the structure. It looks like just fluff, right? But we understand that the significance in this reference to the female spider, the way it's mentioned in the verse in the Quran, is significant because of how the black widow spider kills her mate, right? So the mate is the allegory here is, you know, the idol, right, that you have, and, you know, the black widow spider being the idol. You know, the idol will destroy the subject, right? And so this is significant, and then, you know, the mother is also eaten by the babies for the black widow spider. So it's pretty amazing that the female is mentioned here. You know, it could have been the male spider. God says, we cite these examples for people and none appreciate them except the knowledgeable. And we see that, yeah, it takes significant amount of knowledge for you to know about a spider, and the black widow spider specifically, and how their whole life cycle works. So God willing, I will continue. Verse 45, the contact prayer salat. You shall recite what is revealed to you of the scripture and observe the contact prayer salat. For the contact prayer prohibits evil and vice. But the remembrance of God through salat is the most important objective. God knows everything you do. And the footnote says, your God is whatever or whoever occupies your mind most of the time. See Appendix 2014 and Appendix 27. So this is very important, I think, and we were talking about it in the last Quran study when it came to businesses and stuff. Right? What is on your mind most of the day? If it's anything other than God, then that thing is your God, right? And that's why we have, you know, 5 daily contact prayers spread across multiple, you know, times of the day, throughout the day, you know, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. And then even when you're going to sleep, you're still thinking about, you know, the prayer that's going to come after the next day. And so all of these things also count towards making God your God, because you know, as you're looking at the time, you're anticipating for the next prayer, you know, all of those things add up, you know. So it's a gift from God. And it also prohibits evil and vice, obviously, because you are growing your soul, you're, you know, making your soul stronger, you know. This is very, you know, this is like the steak and lobster for your soul. I mean, obviously, you know, people can people can pray to God, you know, whenever they want, but, you know, we make contact with God in a way that, you know, other people can't with the contact prayers. We have a direct connection with God in that, and, you know, it's allows you to, if you do it dedicated to God alone, and in reverence of God alone, it allows you to grow your soul substantially, right? So this would be very different from people who think that, you know, they can worship God all day long and but not do the contact prayer. I mean, so it would be very difficult for people to compare or come anywhere near the ranks of those people who are actually regularly doing their contact prayer salat, because their souls should have grown substantially from doing these contact prayers. But God says the remembrance to the salat is the most important objective, right? So it is very important for us that when we are doing our contact prayers, we are reverent during our contact prayers, and we're actually thinking about God. Because if you're doing your contact prayers and you're not thinking about God, you're not doing justice to yourself, and you're just kind of like wasting that opportunity that God has given you to remember Him. You know, it's a way for you to connect with God and remember Him. And if you're just doing your contact prayer and just going through the motions and not even thinking about God, you know, I mean, I understand that, you know, it's difficult to do it all the time. You know, there's going to be times when, you know, things may happen and we may not be as reverent as other times, but we should try our best to be as reverent as possible, as much as possible, to think about God as we're doing the prayer, to think about the words that we're saying, the underlying meaning behind it, and actually, you know, meaning them as we're saying them, you know, not just giving it lip service. Actively thinking about what we're saying and imagining in your head that, you know, you're standing in front of God and saying these things to God and meaning them while you say it, you know. And because that's what's going to count, and the more you mean it, you know, as you say, the more reverent you are, the more your soul is going to grow, you know. So it's very important, and as God says, the remembrance of God is the most important objective through the salat. So remembrance of God is important whether you're doing your contact prayer or whether you're doing zikr, either way, both things, you have to mean what you're saying. It's not just saying with words, like you see all these traditional Muslims, for example, they're doing zikr and they're going in a market and they have all these beads and they're talking and they're going like this with their fingers, and it's like pretending that they're so righteous and they're doing meditation and getting credit, but they're just talking or doing other things. God knows what's going in their minds, and it could be anything. But we understand that meditation is something that is a mindful practice where you're engaging, your conscious and your subconscious into remembering God, actively thinking about God, and it's not just saying words. So we have to remember that, and the more we remember God, the more our soul is going to grow. So we have to take it very seriously. God willing, I continue. Verse 46, it says, one God, one religion. It says, do not argue with the people of the scripture, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, except in the nicest possible manner, unless they transgress, and say, we believe in what was revealed to us and what was revealed to you, and our God and your God is one and the same. To him we are submitters. We have revealed to you this scripture, and those whom we bless with the previous scripture will believe in this. Also some of your people will believe in it. Indeed, those who disregard our revelations are the real disbelievers. So the footnotes basically is pointing at the fact that there's one God and one religion. So all these people, Jews, Christians, Muslims, they were supposed to have one religion. They're supposed to worship one God. They're supposed to all be submitters. But since they have deviated, we're being told not to argue with them except in the nicest way. So it's a commandment that we have to think about, right? Because if you're not doing it in the nicest possible manner, they could be repulsed, right? But it also says there is an important clause here that says unless they transgress, right? So it's very apparent. Like, for example, like you can't go inviting a neighbor and start giving out to them and looking down on them and criticizing them in an aggressive manner, for example, or in a rude way, or in a way that you want them to think that you're better than them, or anything like that, right? But we're talking about a situation where it says unless they transgress, that's a completely different situation, right? So if they're transgressing, there are people that are transgressing, like they're attacking and stuff like that, and being argumentative and trying to pull a smart one, and things like that. Of course, I mean, you don't have to, at that time, you don't have to be nice to them, right? Because otherwise the unless they transgress part wouldn't be there. So there's definitely there for a reason, and we can respond accordingly, So yes, we have to do it in the best possible way, and we have to try to present it in the best possible way. But it doesn't apply to people who are transgressing and acting, arrogantly and trying to attack your religion, or just trying to argue with you for the sake of argument, So those are very different. But sometimes, people will try to present this verse without paying any attention to the unless they transgress part, and say that you have to always do it in the nicest possible way, with a smile on your face, and not say anything wrong. And even if they're cursing or whatever, yelling, whatever, you're just gonna be smiling, like and it doesn't make sense, obviously. If you love God and you worship God and you have reverence for God, and if you see people being disrespectful about God and you see people cursing God, I mean, you're not going to tolerate that, if it's about your father or your mother or your spouse or your children, and you certainly can't be apathetic when it's coming against God, someone that you are supposed to love the most and have the most reverence and respect for, So it's not even natural to have that, But obviously, if you're going to invite people, or you're going to argue with them or debate with them, you're going to do it with wisdom and kind enlightenment, and the best possible way, because you're inviting people and they may take heed, right? So these are different situations that we can't combine into one. Verse 47, we have revealed to you this scripture, and those whom we bless with the previous scriptures will believe in it. Also some of your people will believe in it. Indeed, those who disregard our revelations are the real disbelievers. And then verse 48 says, Quran, Muhammad's miracle, you did not read the previous scriptures, nor did you write them with your hand. In that case, the rejectors would have had reasons to harbor doubts. And, one second. I don't know what's causing this issue again. Okay, so if anybody's chatting, I don't know if the chat is causing this. All right, let's try again. So, so I was reading about Muhammad's miracle, verse 48. It says, you did not read the previous scriptures, nor did you write them with your own hand. In that case, rejectors would have had a reason to harbor doubts. And then the footnote says, it was the will of the Most Wise to separate the Quran from its awesome mathematical miracle by 1400 years. Seeing how the Muslims en masse have idolized Muhammad, it is obvious that if the Quran's mathematical miracle was also revealed through Muhammad, many people would have worshipped him as God incarnate. As it is, God willed that the great miracle of the Quran shall await the computer age and have it revealed through his messenger of the covenant. See appendices 1, 2, and 26. So Quran was Muhammad's miracle, given the fact that he did not read any of the previous scriptures, as it says, and God gave him the scripture in perfect, Arabic tongue, and and we see from the footnote that it was God's will to separate the mathematical miracle from the Quran itself, right? And obviously, this would raise more suspicion from outsiders, who will see the miracle. I mean, obviously, anybody who disbelieves and is destined to disbelieve will still disbelieve, right? But for the believers, having the miracle separated from the text, definitely gives you a lot of assurance, right? It's one thing, for example, for someone to say, that you should write a scripture with all these mathematical parameters. But someone who writes a scripture without knowing anything about the mathematical parameters, and you discover the parameters and all the mathematical facts at a later time, that's what makes it a miracle, right? It's not. It will still be a miracle, but that's what makes it even more powerful. That all these things are there because. It would be one thing, for example, to challenge someone to write a scripture with all these mathematical patterns, right? But it would be another thing to give them a book, someone who says, I can write a Quran just like this, or this miracle anybody can do. So you give them a random book and say, okay, this is a book, and show me the miracle, the mathematical miracle, the literary mathematical miracle in this book, right? And they can't do it, obviously, right? Even if they try to write one, they can't do it. But certainly, if you give them a book from somewhere that's not even written by them, they cannot do it, right? And that would be a similar example with the Quran, because Muhammad had no idea about the mathematical code, right? And people for 1400 years had no clue about that, right? And it was discovered much later. So that's what makes it even more amazing, the fact that the miracle was separated in time. And we know that if it wasn't, as it says in the footnote, people would also be worshiping Muhammad as God, which they almost are anyways. But then they would be literally worshiping him as God who came alive. So I think that is pretty significant too. Verse 49 says, in fact, these revelations are clear in the chests of those who possess knowledge. Only the wicked will disregard our revelations. They said, if only miracles could come down to him from his Lord, say all miracles come only from God. I am no more than a manifest warner. Is it not enough of a miracle that we sent down to you this book being recited to them? This is indeed a mercy and a reminder for people who believe. Say, God suffices as a witness between me and you. He knows everything in the heavens and the earth. Surely those who believe in falsehood and disbelieve in God are the real losers. They are in hell. And the R is actually underlined. It says, they challenge you to bring the retribution. If it were not for a predetermined appointment, the retribution would have come to them immediately. Certainly it will come to them suddenly when the least expected. They challenge you to bring the retribution. Hell already surrounds the disbelievers. And it says in the footnote, anyone who dies before the age of 40 goes to heaven, and not everyone deserves this. People sometimes lament the slowness of justice when a vicious criminal is not executed promptly. God knows who deserves heaven. See 46:15 and Appendix 32. So, also, I mean, this is referring to people going to heaven in the age of 40, but also it's talking about people who are already in hell, because as far as God is concerned, there's people that are already in hell. God knows who's deserving of hell and who is deserving of heaven. So these people are already going to hell, as we can see as a result. So I guess, God willing, I can stop here. And, if you guys have any comments or questions at this point, please feel free.
Great study.
Thank you, mashallah.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Great.
Assalamu alaikum, mashallah.
Yeah, some really good verses, like about the contact prayers, you know, remembrance through God, of God through the contact prayers is the most important objective. And, yeah, it's like, you know, I remember, like how the messenger talked about, and this is, it kind of, I mean, it happened to me first coming into submission, is like you think, you don't look at them for what they are, as like a eternal meal or eternal, yeah, like an eternal meal that's a gift. And I guess because you might be thinking like a chore, but he said, this is it's not, it's really a gift that's helping us. That's how much. It's like we look forward to, when the way I think about it now, it's like when I look forward to a meal or something that tastes good, you get kind of excited, and so it's the same thing with the contact prayers, but it's even better than that.
Mm-hmm. Mashallah, yes.
But yeah, it's good reminder about that. Yeah, and there's also like verse 48 is something important too, because I've heard and I've come across people, mainly Christians. You know how like the Quran and other parts
Mm-hmm.
it talks about people that are jealous of certain scriptures, and so I've heard like people try to when they read the Quran, they see all this awesome information
Mm-hmm.
and new revelations and stuff, but you know, they just resort to saying, "Oh, it's a copy
Sorry, I think John, your voice is cutting in and out.
or it's a fabrication of the Bible or something."
Mm-hmm.
But verse that case, they alone would tell them. Others like Paul, another like how Muhammad.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, don't go to the bar. Yeah, so you were saying that they think that the Quran is copied from the Bible, right? Because they're jealous. So, anyone else with any other comments? Any comments about homosexuals or cheaters?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me better
Yeah,
now?
yeah, mashallah.
A little bit. Okay. Yeah, I was talking about verse 48. How I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how much y'all heard, but like I've been, uh, I've come across Christians and stuff that are jealous of the Quran. You know how the Quran talks about how people from previous scriptures can get jealous,
Mm-hmm.
and so they try to say it's a fabrication or it's Muhammad like knew the previous scriptures and just copied and pasted them or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean we know from verse 48 and especially with the miracle that's not the case. And there's other parts of the Quran where it also said how it talks about how Muhammad had no knowledge of the previous scriptures. I think there's like another verse or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And God's, I mean, obviously, you know, they didn't have the other scriptures in Arabic, and the Quran was
Yeah,
written in
plus
Arabic.
it was the days of ignorance too, or the
Mm-hmm.
age of ignorance. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he wouldn't have had. I mean, like, why would he waste or why would he spend time just
Mm-hmm.
regurgitating? Or and then
Mm-hmm.
it's all accurate information, too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
The Quran says
More
it's the most
accurate than what's in the
accurate
Bible.
narration. Right? Yeah. It's exactly.
And if the Quran was copied from the Bible, I mean, why would the Quran say that Jesus is not God?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think verse 50, as they said, if only miracles could come down from him, from his Lord, say all miracles come from God, I'm no more than a manifest warner. And 51 talks about the mathematical miracle.
Mashallah, God has given us the ultimate miracle, and subhanallah, I mean, if this is something that will not make anybody believe, I mean, nothing is gonna make them believe. I mean, as God says, even if the sky opens up and they see angels coming down from the sky, and they're still gonna say our eyes are bewitched. You know, we have been tricked. And so we have an awesome mathematical miracle
Yeah.
that will
Hmm.
stump anyone if they really think about it. Like I was saying earlier,
Right.
you know,
And
uh, imagine having a mathematical miracle. If you give someone a random book and ask them to find a mathematical miracle in it, I mean, they're not gonna be able to do anything, right? Like we know what these people came up with at the time when the Quran's mathematical miracle was revealed. They tried to come up with their own miracle, the math miracle in the Bible, and it was just ridiculous. And the messenger also plays the audio where the guy's explaining it,
uh,
how it was just ridiculous.
uh-huh. Yeah, it's a joke. Like they're just playing with numbers, and like
Mm-hmm.
if you
They're
do
just
this, and it didn't even really talk
yeah,
about anything either.
yeah.
Like
It's just you're making
I
random,
I heard about
random,
that one.
random sentences like at kindergarten level.
Right. And then they had to like try to like they didn't have any basis. They just picked a random
Mm-hmm.
number that had
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with anything, and just trying to
Mm-hmm.
find something that
Mm-hmm.
like made a word.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
balloon. Ooh. Or
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
but
Yeah, and we see the Quran's mathematical miracle is so advanced, right? It's like advanced down to the initials, down to the letters, and obviously there's absolutely no comparison whatsoever. Inshallah.
yeah, exactly.
So I would also encourage people who haven't said anything to also you know maybe if they can't talk maybe just type in or something. We're here to learn from each other, from our perspectives. So if you have something to share, please don't hesitate. Or if anybody has any questions, maybe Maybe if there are any off-topic questions, we can discuss those. We always have off-topic questions, right? But usually the off-topic questions come up like when we're not in a study. So good when we're in a
Okay,
study, we can discuss those. Yeah.
brother, I would like to add on the how people think that the Quran is copied from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Also a lot of the Christians that believe that, they don't believe that Prophet Muhammad was a prophet in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So
Of
they
course.
disbelieve even of Muhammad's prophet here as well.
Yeah. Of course.
Even though he's mentioned in the
Mm-hmm.
Old Testament. Subhanallah.
Yep.
Yeah, he's also mentioned in the New Testament by Jesus, but it's the same situation that every generation like has done with the previous prophets because they're all waiting. They're still waiting on the so-called, you know, whoever they're waiting on. So when the prophet does come to them, Jesus said it would be someone greater, greater than I. So I mean, in a sense, like he came with something greater than what Jesus came with. And I mean, they've done the same thing with like Joseph, and they said there's no other prophet or this and that going to come after him, or even prophets that did. There's other examples like they're still like even the Jews are still waiting on some so-called prophet, you know. And like the Quran tells us, when a prophet or a messenger does come to the people, they completely reject them or they ignore it. So it's like they're hypocrites because they're just saying like, oh no, we'll believe. We're waiting on this new prophet. And when you give them what they're so-called asking for, they uh they they don't listen. You know.
All right, brother. They want it like exactly how um they're expecting it. They don't want what God is giving them, and you see that throughout history. Like a lot of verses in the Quran, it explains how people like they want angels to come down and stuff like that, but God never gives them what they want. Subhanallah.
Yeah, I have a kind of question, comment about verse 53 and 54. So is that like for 54 that says hell already surrounds the disbelievers? Like I know this earth is it's kind of explained as like a mild hell or it's a halfway house to hell. um, so for the people who are disbelievers like that are in Satan's kingdom, is that and then they simply transition into the greater retribution of the next life? Is that kind of what this verse is talking about?
Um. Can you repeat the last part? Uh. You're saying
Some
are
people
there
like
people?
bad people.
Are they actually in? The
Uh,
people who are sorry, what?
well, no, I know they're not like in. I know. Is my voice sounding okay?
Yeah,
Like, or
yeah.
am I cutting out? I
No,
just
no,
want to
your
make
voice is
sure
fine.
because I
Yeah, yeah.
can go off.
No, no.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, no, I was just wondering. So it says hell already surrounds the disbelievers. So is that kind of referring to like so for the disbelievers that on this earth, how we know the earth is kind of like a halfway house, or it's kind of explained by the messenger, it's a mild hell. But like for the disbeliever who's in Satan's kingdom and like they're disbelieving, they're miserable, they have all these bad things happen to them. Is that like the hell it's talking about, and then
Mm-hmm.
simply they transition into like the real
Mm-hmm.
hell or Gianna
Yeah, I
of
think
the
it's
hereafter?
yeah, I think it's talking about the actual hell, because like as you can see, it also is talking about heaven.
Almost like it's invisible or something, right?
Well, it's talking about like as
Yeah.
far as God is
Is that what?
concerned, like he already knows. Time and space is irrelevant for God, right? And so God already knows, for example, people
True. Yeah, that's true.
who are destined to be in heaven, and that's why they're dying before 40, you know.
Hmm.
And so same is the case for people who
Oh, okay. Yeah,
are
that makes
not,
sense.
right? Yeah.
Hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. So as far as God is concerned, I mean, they're basically there.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, subhanallah, like God says, they're already stamped. God already knows who's going to heaven and who's going to hell.
Inshallah. Yeah. Yeah. This is kind of scary, right? To think about, like, I hope we're one of those people who are not among these people, right? Because it would be such a sorry situation for all these people, knowing that nothing can be changed at that point, and that the things that they did, all of those things, regrets and remorses and things will just, as God says, that's all that's gonna be there.
Subhanallah, right, brother.
Hmm. Then all these people realize, yeah, all those worldly things that they sold their souls for, like it says here, uh, their lust, the cheating, all of the arrogance, ego, all these things that because of which they disregarded God and rebelled against God's commandments, was not worth it, And much like the allegory of the spider, they just end up, you know, getting trapped in that spider web and, destroying themselves. They're attracted. They're attracted to the spider, right? So they go in and they get entangled in the web.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's the way I thought of it is like, the spider web is the home is so flimsy. Like the other day I saw a black widow web and I was just looking at it and there was these three big ants that were tangled in it and then the widow
Mm-hmm.
was like messing with one of them and I'm just thinking like how did they even get there, Like it's
Mm-hmm.
a home that's so flimsy,
Mm-hmm.
like but it catches
Mm-hmm.
almost anything and everything, like you
Mm-hmm.
could you just look at it and it's like, oh man, that's so flimsy.
Mm-hmm.
That's not dangerous, but
Mm-hmm.
it really is.
Yeah.
So like these people that worship idols, these
Mm-hmm.
flimsy,
Flimsy lies.
foolish stuff, and then
Yeah.
it traps them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, flimsy lies.
Yeah, subhanallah, like thinking about Jesus being God or Muhammad being
Yeah, so
intercessor and all these
subhanallah.
other
Yeah.
things, such flimsy lies
Hmm.
that they cannot uh, defend even.
Yeah, and what makes it worse is like it's I just I don't read too much, but like I'll come across videos and I'll read comments like what people are saying and or just even videos like this one Catholic channel that popped up on my Instagram and it's like they had this picture of like just the sheer arrogance of these people. Like they
Mm-hmm.
made this meme of like that said how I wake up every morning knowing my religion is the one true religion and everybody else is following a lie. Literally that's what it said. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm maybe paraphrasing a few words, but and then they had this guy walking on a beach like so snobby and stuff. And I mean, this is like a Catholic that are sharing this, and like little do they know, it's like they
Mm-hmm.
think everybody else are the fools,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like we know they're the real fools, and
Mm-hmm.
it's worse because they're so arrogant about it, like they insult people and mock people, like in the comment section I was reading, you know. I mean, even in the Bible, it says Solomon had wrote in like Proverbs how God abhors and is repulsed by arrogance. Like it's so I guess you can see just like why these people deserve something like that maybe. I think Brother Hussein had a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Brother Hussein is asking if I gave my mom some money and she passed away, leaving that cash for me, will I still have to pay zakat on it? Is it considered a gain? So you paid, like, I mean, I guess you'd know want to have more context, right? Like, I mean, it's one thing like you have zakat in your hand and you're giving it to her and she just passes away at that time with the money in her hand, so you know that was your zakat you were just giving her. But I mean, if you just gave her zakat today and maybe a few days later she passed away, I mean, you don't know what she did with the zakat, anyways. But the thing is, zakat you were supposed to give her anyways, and but if you're receiving inheritance, that is separate. So you're gonna give. I mean, how much, how much inheritance did your mother leave that you don't even want to take the. No, anyways, you want to take the zakat out of it that you gave. But yeah, no, I mean, of course, if you received inheritance from your mother, even if you gave zakat before, now you're receiving the inheritance, so it's income coming into your pocket. So yeah, I would still give the zakat on it, and especially to be on the safe side, because your charity, you don't know exactly what could have happened to the charity that you gave. But just the fact that you gave them charity doesn't mean that if you receive money, you're going to deduct your zakat out of it that you gave to them. Oh, some other submitter. Yeah, no, he should still give charity. Right, mashallah, yes. Yeah, I understand. I understand. I was just kidding. Yes. I'm not talking about your own mother. Yes. Mashallah. That's a good question. Yeah, just for make people think about. So, are there any other comments or questions from anyone? All right. So I guess maybe we could end the study here if there's no other comments or questions. Thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. God bless you all.